Hi, I'm Isaiah McPeak, and I've been coaching debate at the high school and college levels for the past 8 years. My goal today is to help you feel comfortable and know that you're going to have a great time and be very valuable as a judge in providing feedback, criticism, and a decision in debate rounds at the high school or college level. I want to orient you to multiple formats of debate and help you be prepared to go in and really provide the type of valuable feedback that you can to the debaters who are there to communicate to anybody and learn how anybody with different backgrounds and experiences and interests and ideas is going to relate to the ideas that they are communicating. So I've organized this orientation into 5 main principles. The first principle is the purpose of debate is to learn and grow. The second is that you must listen, then decide, then critique. The third is that the resolution is what creates a debate. The fourth is you need to empathize as a judge. And finally, the fifth is you need to educate as a judge. And I want to show you how to perform to each of these principles. So starting with principle number 1. The purpose of debate is to learn and grow. What this means is that you are coming to judge, not to just decide who wins or loses a debate round, but actually to help the debaters themselves learn what do they need to do to improve for the next debate round, or different skills that they're going to need to change and to act on and to learn for all of life. That's what they're there to practice, and that's what you're there to provide feedback on. So don't feel like you need to have pressure to understand the vast intricacies of debate and have to render a decision in the round. That's not your main purpose. Yes, you're there to decide, but you're there to decide and show students why you as an individual decided the way you did, which helps them learn and grow as they learn to communicate to a wide range of audiences. So many judges say, well, I don't know if I can judge a debate round, and they're nervous about it. They shouldn't be, because the goal of what we're doing in coaching these high school and college students is we want them to learn to communicate to a wide range of audiences with a wide range of unique backgrounds. So your unique ideas, education, ability to listen, background with debate or no background with debate at all, and successful membership in society as you have lived it are all going to inform the debaters as they try to communicate to you and have you resonate with ideas or be persuaded by one idea over another. So your individualness is what makes you a good judge. The purpose then is for you to be okay with your individualness, comfortable that you're there to listen and then provide feedback. Here is my perception based on who I am to what you were telling me. That will allow those debaters to improve in how to communicate to a person like you, and hopefully to all people in general. Now, there are 3 things that you must do as you're achieving this purpose of learning and growing. The first one is facilitate the debate round. You as the judge are the final authority for making sure that the debate round carries forward, and if anybody pulls out knives or starts yelling at each other, then it's your job to stop the debate round. Now, that's not going to happen, but you do have to keep the debate round on time and make sure no one is abusing the other team or way out of line. It so rarely happens that it's almost not an issue, but that is who you are in the debate round. And if somebody's cell phone goes off, well, you need to tell them to turn it off, or maybe even throw an audience person out of the room. Second of all, you're there to decide. Determine the winner based on the arguments. And we'll get into more how to do that later, but that's your second role. And your third role is to provide feedback. And that feedback is what's really the most crucial part of your role, because that's where the debaters are going to hear from you, they're going to be able to learn, and they're going to be able to grow. Let's move to the second principle. The second principle is to listen, consider, and critique. How are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to teach you the ways that most people go about listening and taking notes on a debate and help you understand the framework of a debate round. There are three basic formats that I want to orient you for. They're Lincoln-Douglas, which we abbreviate LD. That's based on the traditional debates that Lincoln and Douglas had for president, and it means a one-on-one debate. Then there is team policy. Team. This could be policy or value or anything. But we usually call it TP because it usually is policy. So team debate has its own format. And then finally, parliamentary debate. And we're using the American parliamentary style. Each of these has different time limits and different roles that each speaker performs, and you need to be comfortable understanding that you might see any one of these. How would you take notes, listen, and provide feedback on any one of these? You don't have to be an expert in the format itself. You don't have to even know what the time limits are. The debaters can keep track of that for you, and they will police themselves. They're going to have their own timepieces. You really need to just understand what you're getting into in terms of, I need to be prepared to take notes on such and such long of a round, and this is the basic role of each person that I'm judging. So what you're going to need is a flow pad. And a flow pad is just a piece of paper, but on the piece of paper, as you can see here, you're going to end up with several columns, and those columns are going to have arguments. You can see on this one that doesn't have pretty colors that there are arrows, and you see that the arrows show a flow of a particular argument across the course of a round. That's why we call it a flow pad, because you're going to see one argument appear, then you're going to see an answer to that argument, then you're going to see a further answer to that argument, and so on, and you're going to be able to go back to your notes at the end of the round and see how did that argument progress, how did it flow. So here's what you want to do. You want to take ample paper, so we'll provide some at any tournaments that I'm running. Most people do. You can ask the debaters for it if you didn't bring any. Usually you want to take 2 colors of pen just so you can keep track of the 2 sides of debate. And then you want to divide that into the number of speeches you're going to see in the round. So in the example I showed you, somebody folded their paper, and then they folded it again, and folded it again, then unfolded it. That created 8 columns. That's a TP round. An LD round usually has only 5 speeches, and a parley round has usually 6 speeches, so you don't need as much paper. The most you'll need is 8 columns because the team policy round has a 8-speech format. But you need to take ample paper, not in terms of how much are you going across, but really in terms of how much are you going up and down. Because you'll find that some good debaters are really going to keep everything very organized for you. You might only need 1 piece of paper. Sometimes they're going to go in so much depth that one speaker presents their first arguments, which you take in this first column here. The second speaker, instead of responding directly, is going to have what we call off-case arguments, which basically means they're not directly refuting a point that was already made. They're making an additional point. Sometimes that's the wise thing to do if someone presents a particularly good argument. You know you can't beat it, but you might be able to outweigh it by making another type of argument. So you're going to be needing to sometimes use multiple sheets of paper to keep track of the arguments as they go. Let's talk about some of the formats of each of these rounds. I'm going to have to erase some stuff up here. And we'll start with team policy. Now, I think the proper term for team policy is also cross-examination format, because it's one of the formats that has cross-examination. There are 8 speeches in this round. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8. The names of these speeches have to do with the various speaker positions. In debate, there are 2 sides. There is the affirmative, who affirm the resolution or the topic or the proposition, and there's the negative, who negate it. We usually call these aff and neg. Another name is government or proposition on the affirmative side and opposition on the negative side. that's not important really. What's important is that the names that we refer to each of the speeches by have something to do with the letters that affirmative and negative start with. So the 1A is the first affirmative speaker. He's going to give 2 speeches in this round, so the 1A is giving the 1AC in the first speech, the first affirmative constructive. That is an 8-minute speech. Now the 1 in, the first negative, is also giving 2 speeches, so she's going to be giving the 1 in C in her first speech. That's going to be 8 minutes. Then there is a 2AC, the second affirmative constructive, and there is a 2 in C, the second negative constructive. These are all 8 minutes. Then you have the last 4 speeches. They're all rebuttals, and they're shorter speeches. Right here you see what we call the negative block. The 1 in R comes after the 2 in C. That means that there are 2 negative speeches back to back. The affirmative team, who has the toughest job of affirming the resolution, gets the first word and the last word. They get the very last speech because there's a negative block here. The last 4 speeches switch with the negative going first so that the affirmative ends last. There's the 1 in R, the 1 AR, the 2 in R, last negative speech, and the 2 AR. Those are the 8 speeches. Now you saw cross-examination in the title. That's because between each constructive speech there's a cross-examination. The cross-examination lasts for 3 minutes. In the cross-examination, the person who just spoke is asked questions by the person who's not about to give a speech from the other team, so the partner. And that partner will ask questions for 3 minutes, and it's up to that individual to decide what questions to ask and to really guide the cross-examination. It is up to the speaker to answer the questions posed. Usually we don't take notes on what happens in cross-examination, but wait for an argument that might have been hinted at in cross-examination to be brought up on the flow by the next speaker in order to count. This is the cross-examination format except for one addition, which is prep time. The sides in most rounds that you're going to judge are going to each have 5 minutes total prep time. So the affirmative team has discretionary prep time of 5 minutes to use throughout the round, and the negative team the same. The teams will keep track of that for each other, and you don't really have to do anything but kind of verify, yeah, they're keeping track of it fairly, and it's not a big deal. This is a team policy round, and in total, because all these rebuttals are 5 minutes, you're talking about around an hour and 5, hour and 10 minute round. It's the longest format that there is. So next, let's talk about Lincoln Douglas. The LD format is similar, but it has 5 speeches. The negative team, or negative individual really, only goes twice. So there's a 1AC, that is, well, it could be anything, but usually it's 7 minutes. Then there's the 1NC, usually 8. Then there's the 1AR, the first affirmative rebuttal, and that is often 3 minutes. Then there's the negative rebuttal. I guess we don't need to have the ones on it. Well, we do there. The negative rebuttal is usually 7 minutes, and then the final rebuttal from the affirmative team is usually 4 minutes. These middle times can switch in different leagues, but this is the basic format. As before, there's a cross-examination between each of the constructives. So here you have an idea of the Lincoln Douglas format, and you're only going to need to flow 5 speeches. Next we'll look at parliamentary debate.